So far we've talked about lines and graphing lines, but we haven't yet talked about the equations of lines. So today we're going to use slope-intercept form to write equations and graph equations. And then we're going to also use what's called point-slope form to write equations. Okay, now we've probably all heard of or seen slope-intercept before. Y equals mx plus b. Okay, in this equation, m is your slope, so that's your rise over your run. And your b is your y-intercept. So remember, your y-intercept is where your graph hits the y-axis. Okay, so again, m is your slope. My highlighter doesn't want to highlight. There we go. M is your slope. And your y-intercept is going to be 0, comma, b, because remember your y-intercept, x is always 0. Okay, so for these first couple of examples, we are going to find the slope and the y-intercept of the equation. Now, if you look at all of these equations, the first thing you will notice is they are not in the form y equals mx plus b, okay? In order to find the y-intercept and the slope, your equation has to be in the form y equals mx plus b, okay? In other words, you are solving for y, all right? Every single one of these equations, when we're done doing the algebra, it has to be y equals this, y equals this, y equals this, okay? Because that's what our equation looks like, y equals mx plus b, okay? So this is going to take a little bit of algebra. So remember, when we're solving equations for something, it's all about opposites. So if I want y to be on the left side of the equation by itself, that means I need to move x over to the other side of the equation. Now, I can't just take it and move it. I have to mathematically disappear it from the left side in order to put it on the right side. And in order to do that, if I have a positive 7x, I subtract 7x, okay? Now, equations are all about staying balanced. So if I subtract x from the left side of the equation, I also have to subtract it from the right, okay? So 7x minus 7x cancels, and I'm left with negative y equals negative 7x plus 9. Okay, and I often get the question, why did you not do 9 minus 7x? And the answer is simple. We're supposed to put this into y equals mx plus b. When I'm in mx plus b, the x always comes first, so that's why I keep it the same, negative 7x plus 9. Okay, other question I get, why can I not just do 9 minus 7 to get 2? Well, remember, those are not like terms. One has an x and one does not. So I can therefore not combine them. I have to leave them as negative 7x plus 9. Okay, now we are almost in y equals mx plus b, but you'll notice we have this negative sign here, and we don't want negative y equals mx plus b. We want just y equals mx plus b. So in order to get rid of that negative 1 in front, I'm going to divide every piece of my equation by negative 1. And now I have y equals 7x minus 9. Okay, now from here, we can find our slope and our y-intercept, right? Our slope is the m, the number right in front of the x. So m is equal to 7. And then our y-intercept, or our b, is equal to negative 9. So our y-intercept is going to be 0, comma, negative 9. Okay, and that's our final answer to find our slope and our y-intercept. All right, let's try another one. Letter B. So again, this has to be in the form y equals mx plus b. So I have to take this 2x and move it over to the right side of the equation. Okay, in order to do that, since it's a positive 2x, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. So 2x minus 2x cancels, and I have 5y equals negative 2x plus 15. Okay, almost there. I have my y on the left and my x on the right. However, I still have a 5 in front of my y. So just like before, anything that is in front of the y, I need to divide on both sides. So I divide 5 here, I divide 5 here, and I divide 5 here. So then that 5 goes away, and I get y equals negative 2/5 x. Again, slopes are supposed to be fractions. So there is absolutely no need to go and type negative 2 divided by 5 in your calculator. Do not do it. Leave your slope as a fraction. And then 15 divided by 5 is 3. So now my equation is in the form y equals mx plus b, and where my slope is equal to negative 2/5, and my y-intercept is 0, 3. All right, I would like you to go ahead and algebraically solve letter C to be y equals mx plus b, and then tell me what the slope and the y-intercept are. So you should have your slope as 7/2 and your y-intercept as 0, negative 4. If you did not, please go back, hit pause, and correct your mistake so you make sure you have accurate notes. Okay, next we are going to graph an equation using the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, so in this case, this first case, we are already given an equation that's in the form y equals mx plus b. So looking at this equation here, I can see that my slope is 2/3 and my y-intercept is 0, negative 4. So in order to graph this, I'm going to start with my y-intercept, right? So I'm going to graph the point 0, negative 4. And there it is right there. Okay, remember your slope is the rise over the run. So from here, I'm going to rise up 2, and I'm going to run over 3. And there's my second point on the graph. Now you can continue going this way and go up 2 over 3 to get your next point. Or remember, we can reverse this slope and get a point on the left side of our original point. So remember, negative 2 over negative 3 is the same thing. So if I go down 2, left 3, that's also going to give me a point on this graph. All right. Then once you have at least 3 points, go ahead and connect those dots. And remember, make your line all the way through your graph here. Oops, my line doesn't seem to want to draw. There we go. And that's how you graph an equation from slope-intercept form. Okay, so no surprise, I would like you to go ahead and try this one. All right, that is what your line should look like. You should have used a slope of negative 1 over 5, or you could have done 1 over negative 5. Remember, those are the same thing. And your y-intercept is 0, positive 3. All right, now we're going the other way, where they give us the slope and the y-intercept, and they're saying, okay, use this information to write it into an equation. So if I have the equation y equals mx plus b, remember m is my slope. Oh, wow. Doesn't want me to highlight the slope. There we go. And b is my y-intercept. So all you have to do is take those and plug it in. Y equals, my m is 1/4, x plus, and actually be careful, because since that's a negative 3, it's actually going to be minus 3. And that is writing an equation in slope-intercept form if you're given the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, now if you recall at the beginning of the lesson, I said that we're going to be using slope-intercept form and point-slope form. So point-slope form of an equation is this right here. You'll notice it looks very similar to y equals mx plus b, but this is the equation you're going to use when you're given 2 points and a slope, or actually a slope and a point, because remember, a y-intercept has to have 0 for the x. If you're given just some sort of random point, then you can't plug that in for b. What you have to do is use this equation that's called point-slope form, okay? So our slope is still m, and then we're given some random point x comma y. Okay, so for example 4, we are still writing the equation on the line, but we are going to go through with a random point instead of a y-intercept, okay? So the first thing I like to do is write down the equation. Oops. Okay, and the more labeling you do, the less confusing this will be. So first I'm told that my slope is -2. So remember that's your m. Okay, and then you're given a random point that is not the x-intercept or the y-intercept. So this is going to be x1, y1. All right, so I am just taking all of those pieces of information and plugging it into my equation. So I leave this y alone, and my y1 is 5. My slope is -2. I leave this x alone, and I have -1 for my x1. So this is going to be minus -1. And then remember, 2 minuses make a plus. Okay, so I took my point and I plugged it in. Okay, after I plug it in, I still have to have y equals mx plus b at the end. And you can see I'm close, but I have this kind of guy over here. I have these parentheses over here that I have to get rid of. So my next step is going to be to solve for y, just like we did before. Now, if you remember PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, the first thing we need to do is get rid of the parentheses. So I'm going to distribute that -2. Y minus 5 stays the same, and this is -2x minus 2. My very last step to solve for y is then just to add 5 to both sides. So I have y equals -2x plus 3. Now I have this in the form y equals mx plus b. Okay, so those are the steps that you would follow if you're given a slope and some random point. Okay, now last scenario is going to be they give you just 2 random points. Okay, so they did not give me the slope, they just gave me 2 random points. But the good news is we know how to find the slope if we're given 2 random points, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is find slope. y1 minus y2 over x. Actually, I think I did the 2's and 1's the other way. It doesn't matter, but I will stay consistent for your sake. All right, so I'm going to label my points, x1, y1, x2, y2, just like we did in our slope lesson. So this is going to be 4 minus 5 over -3 minus 2. So m is equal to -1 over -5, which is actually just 1 over 5, right? So there's my slope. Once we have our slope, now we're back up here to this scenario. I have a slope and I have a random point. Here's my slope, and we'll just choose this point. It doesn't matter which one you use. I'm just going to pick that one because it's first, okay? Now our steps are going to be the same. Plug it in. All right, so y minus y1 is 5. Our m is 1 over 5. And our x1 is 2. Okay? Last step, just like before, solve for y. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do, and this might give us some ugly numbers here, but that's okay. We have calculators, right? So y minus 5 equals 1 over 5x minus 2/5. 1/5 times 2 is 2/5. And then my last thing to do when I solve for y is to add 5 to both sides. So that goes away, and I get y equals 1/5 x. And then in my calculator, let's see, negative 2/5 plus 5. And remember, you can always hit math, enter, enter to keep that as a fraction, plus 23 over 5, okay? And my math lab is probably going to want to have you leave that as a fraction. So depending on what calculator you have, you're either hitting math, enter, enter to keep that as a fraction, or you probably have a button on your calculator that looks like this. That's going to change your fraction to your decimal if you're using a different calculator. All right, so that is writing the equations of lines. It seems like a lot. Just make sure you're going through and following the steps and asking questions if you need help.